right, guys. Mo, I'm gonna make you a co-host, but I don't want you to talk crazy over.
I got you. Nah, man. You know, it's Sunday night, man.
Somebody send us to Audacious. Get Audacious in here. In the meantime, I don't even follow crypto, man. There's a lot of people I don't follow. I started following back now. Oh, there's Audacious. Right to speak.
Oh, my boy showed up.
Oh, he did. I thought he wasn't gonna show.
He was a duck. He run off.
But let's be fair. Of
course.
Audacious, what's going on? We just waiting for T. But Audacious, if you got anything to say, go ahead, man. Say it.
My brother.
No, I was just going to say on the previous. I was just going to say basically that I don't think FedNow is going to be using XRP.
He just said it.
And FedNow, if you actually look at what FedNow is doing, it's nothing that hasn't been done before in other countries. America is just late to the party at having a system like this, where we have fast, instant domestic payments. I mean, we've had that in the UK since 2008, and it hasn't touched XRP to do it. So for the time being, with what I've seen in regards to FedNow, I've not seen no indication or sign that it's going to be using XRP. And when people say, they're going to start using it in July and slowly ramp it up in August, September, nothing's going to happen, in my opinion. And it would show in the price of XRP. That's what I was going to say.
Okay, if that's what you were going to say. I mean, T just said right now that he's not going to pop anybody's bubble. They're not going to use XRP right away when FedNow happens. But in the long run, with more integration, things are going to happen by XRP. That was the whole point. He made the whole point 5 minutes ago. I don't know where you were.
I was in the chat. Didn't you see me right up there? But what... in regards to that FedNow is going to use XRP in the future, I would say that's speculation, and we're speculating. And I mean, speculation. But from what
I just like how you came back from that whole gas fee shit. I'm not even gonna lie.
Dude, you know I did not say the only use case for XRP by institutions is gas fees. You done me dirty with that one. You did me absolutely dirty.
And you said that. I know you said that, but we got T back.
The thing is, it wasn't even recorded, so I can't even go back and prove it. That I didn't say that. I said that's one of the use cases for XRP. I did not say the only use case for XRP is for institutions to use it.
Man, I as soon as I hopped up and I heard that, bro, I started dying in the background. I was like, "You guys are wild."
I'm just curious on what's gonna happen this week, because again, I had a conversation with Future earlier, and he did say, and I think he did ask the question in Mr. iSpace where it's like, why haven't they purchased it off the secondary market? And also, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces at the same damn time. Like, and semantics come into play a lot, right? So come August 1st, supposedly, because I haven't seen no documents, I'm going off of headlines and rumors all over the place. As of August 1st, Russia is supposed to switch over to their CBDC backed by gold. And T, what do you think about that? Because with that going on and all of this shit happening, it's like, it's such a coincidence that all of this is happening the same week that the whole FedNow thing is happening. Say, like, everything is just such a coincidence. You know what I mean?
Okay, so what do I think about that? Well, I think Russia doing that, if it's true, there's going to be that geopolitical accelerant that we need to essentially kick us into overdrive. There's no way that Russia goes live with the CBDC and the rest of the BRICS nations, just sit on the sidelines and do nothing about it and stay on their old system. That means go ahead.
And that's a good point, because that was my question earlier when I was speaking to somebody. I said, okay, if that's the case, that's going to happen, they're not going to go to Russia. They're not going to use Russia as the reserve currency to move the value of gold, because that would literally be giving the power from the U.S. to Russia, and the BRICS partners wouldn't want that. So it's like, what happens? How do they transfer value? People say gold. Just like, how do you move the gold?
Well, Russia and not Russia, China and India already have started their CBDC project, so they will not be the only one from the BRICS nation that have the CBDC live.
There we go. And that's and I want to give a special shout out to James Wallace, who had actually clarified. I know there were a lot of debates surrounding Enbridge, and I know eventually one of the tests that they publicized throughout the BIS was regarding ERC-20 tech, if I'm not mistaken. But what's funny about that is that same model that I saw them use, it looks like this is almost what you're going to see regarding BRICS. And James Wallace and the boys had came out and stated one of the models that they used regarding one of the tests that they didn't publicize was indeed based off of the XRP ledger. Now, this leads me to believe what's likely going to happen here is you're going to see a multi-CBDC environment piloted within BRICS first. Russia's going to go live with their CBDC, and like the gentleman just said, they're not the only ones in BRICS already, gearing up for a launch. When Russia does this, you had better believe the other countries in BRICS, at a bare minimum, that are already associated with the alliance are going live. Now, when that happens, in my opinion, you would need to establish thorough and sound liquidity here within our domestic environment before we could fully interoperate with anyone regarding instant payments cross-border outside of our country. I think this is where that accelerant comes into play. Russia does it, BRICS does it. Everyone has their own private framework based on, who knows, whatever technology they choose to base their private DLTs on. The CBDCs sit on it as a native currency, and then all of those economies within BRICS, whenever they need to interoperate with someone outside of that agreed upon internalized permissioned ecosystem that they may have, right? They may have some sort of a, Enbridge, UDPN style permission setup. But here's the thing with those setups, right? If they're based on smart contract technology, that means that they can only apply settlement within those environments directly via smart contract application. It doesn't, when you go outside of those walled gardens, that's where you need that mainnet for public interfacing. And I think this is the start, this is the beginning of the boom, right? I think the US is full of shit when they say we're going to have to wait until 2030 for a United States CBDC. I think the moment Russia and BRICS decide to move forward, and we're not talking about just the gold-backed, new potential reserve currency, which we'll see if that happens, right? But we're talking about the CBDCs, which in my opinion is even more plausible, right? Because, look, there's so many variables with that, with becoming a new reserve currency. A lot of other countries don't want the pressure of that. All right, they'll allow that pressure to remain on the U.S. dollar for that undertaking, in my opinion. So we could see an environment, like I said, where BRICS gets, the jump regarding CBDC implementation, and then the economies outside of the BRICS nations that have, some sort of framework or code established on a different tab will need some sort of intermediary mechanism to interoperate outside of the smart contract application. And that's where I think potentially technologies like the XRP ledger, Stellar blockchain, and even the XDC network come into play.
Audacious, go ahead, your hands up.
Yeah. I was just thinking that when it comes to cross-border payments, is XRP even necessary? I mean, yes, it's an option, but is it the only option? So you have two siloed DLT networks. Does it really have to go through XRP to interact each other when it comes to cross-border payments between CBDCs, because T did say smart contract applications only work within the DLT system. But from stuff that I've researched, you can have smart contracts that actually work with multi-chains. So you can have a smart contract that is able to interact with another chain. So if smart contracts can be used within a siloed DLT network, like on Enbridge, for example, for CBDC interoperability, then why can't smart contracts be used between two different DLT networks, a multi-chain smart contract, to also facilitate CBDC interoperability without necessarily using XRP?
I think first issue is code, right? So you got to think those systems that use a smart contract based application mechanism to move value, right? The best example, I got one for you, bro. Check this out. You know what the JPM coin and Onyx blockchain settler do, right? So that's a perfect environment right there to use as an example regarding an internalized permission system, right? Where they're moving value, right? Don't be mistaken about it. JP Morgan has an internalized permission system set up where their institutions are all on that same platform regarding moving value via smart contract application. The problem with that type of a setup is that when something else is based on a different code on a mainnet, see, those private DLTs are based on mainnet code, right? So the Onyx blockchain settler is based on ERC20. Now, what they did was, this is why you see instances where the EVM was integrated into the XRP ledger directly. This is why you see hooks becoming a thing, right? Because now what they can do essentially is you're not going to have that trouble anymore. You're right, Audacious. Like, you can essentially move from one smart contract based network to another, but you still need that intermediary mechanism because, number one, you don't have a token to facilitate instant settlement, right? Ethereum is not used for that purpose, right? So if you had an ERC20 based environment, right, and you wanted to go over to another environment that chose a Stellar blockchain, you wouldn't just send the smart contract to settle the payment. The smart contract would serve as a series of instructions to be attached to the corresponding CBDC value, which is then converted over into that ledger's native asset and then sent to the recipient, absorbed, and then the instructions tell it how much it needs to convert itself back over in regarding to the recipient's native currency. So I'm trying to explain it in a non-convoluted manner. I get what you're getting at, right? And they've tried, and in your defense, I'll say this: they've tried to figure that out. Well, how do we get around this, right? How do we, in the event of not you, because right now that's what they're doing with a correspondent environment, right? Is they're using smart contract application alongside that, because we are in a corresponding environment. JP Morgan is one of the biggest beneficiaries of that environment, and they're using that alongside the Onyx blockchain settler and JPM coin. But here's the thing with that, man. That's not going to work when you have a situation where countries on different code without an interoperability mechanism simply for smart contract application across platforms regarding instant settlement comes into play, right? That's the problem. It's the actual real-time exchange and settlement of currency, right? I get the method of thinking. Well, you know, if it's a CBDC, then they can just switch to another CBDC. But they've already released an interoperability-based white paper on CBDCs, which state they can't do that. They need something to make that happen, right? And from what I know, there's only two protocols that can serve, or two assets that can serve that purpose in a neutral manner, that are agnostic, not issued by a sovereign authority, and have connections to EVM and smart contract-based technologies already, right? And what would likely happen in that environment is you would see the Ethereum token for smart contract application potentially become obsolete. Am I telling you unofficially to take Ethereum profits on one last big, ginormous artificial pump? Not officially, but it's definitely, I mean, there could be a situation where they say, oops, we've been found out. This is a Ponzi scheme. Let's get our projects over from the RC20 to the XDC network via the good old Dassel bridge. And then we'll start using that because that's more sustainable for us in this environment because we save money, we'll offer custodianship, and we'll be able to make bank off of those who sell or hold their XDC with us as an institution, blah, 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 right? I believe JP Morgan is also knee deep in XDC and Zenfin as well, but that's another topic. But that's kind of, like I said, I get what Audacious is getting at because it's been an argument that the BIS has even explored themselves about, well, how do we get around having to go through public mainnet interfaces and keep this shit in house so we can reap all of the benefits off of it because we're not smart enough to realize we can benefit massively off of a, open source public good like the XRP ledger as well. But they're figuring it out now, I think. I think they're getting around to that point where they're finally starting to see, maybe we don't need to work around this. Maybe we can benefit off of this absent of a correspondent environment at some point in the future as well. And that's all they were doing. Look, guys, that's all they were doing with Ethereum, man. They set up Ethereum the same way the correspondent system is set up, essentially. You go on that network, you interface with an application, you try to move value or do anything within an app, and you got to pay gas fees for it, right? It's same thing with the correspondent cross-border relationship. You do anything cross-borders, you're going to pay a nice-sized fee for it, right? And so they figured, hey, let's get a monopoly on something that's unfinished. We're not even going to bother to do that because the purpose isn't for it to be efficient. It's for us to make more money and potentially be ahead of the curve if we do go, to a system that's absent of a correspondent environment. The problem is that bankers who aren't involved with tech or the tech portion of the house aren't smart in that side of the house and didn't realize that, we can't achieve fully instant settlement in exchange, right? And see, that's the thing, right? It's not just the settlement, it's the exchange portion as well, that their token simply doesn't perform. A smart contract can only do so much in that regard, right? It can tell something to do it, but it has to tell something to do it. What would it tell to do it? Well, it would tell something that's agnostic that can essentially perform that utility where the Ethereum token couldn't do it, right? Hedera can't do it. Algorand can't do it. None of the smart contract-based technologies can do that, and that's the problem they were running into during Enbridge and all of these UDP private permission tests. Like, okay, cool, yeah, we could do this. This kind of works, within our internal ecosystems. What happens when we go outside of it and we want to settle and exchange as well instantaneously? You run into a bunch of BS. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at it from my point of view.
Yes.
Audacious.
Let me add on TeesCryptoSpot real quick. At the end, interoperability is key. Right now, as T said, each nation's real-time gross settlement is not interoperable. So this is my guess. This is not financial advice. I believe each country, the United States, China, the European Union, they will have their own real-time gross settlement / CBDC. And the only way I believe they're able to connect each real-time gross settlement with every other country is through the Interledger protocol as XRP, the settlement token, on the XRPL. Because you may ask, why would they use XRP? The question comes is China have control on their CBDC. The US may not want China CBDC because of capital restriction or something like that. So China can send over their CBDC, somebody from the China, send it over to the US through XRP. The US guy, he gets XRP, turn it back to US currency. That's the only way I see these payments and these networks being interoperable through ILP, Interledger Protocol, XRP as the agnostic currency transfer on the XRPL.
I just want to let you know, Mr. No, you broke your accent like twice. I'm on to you, man. You definitely did. But go ahead, Mo. I know, Mo, you want to say something.
Nah, I mean, I'm good right now, man.
Or audacious.
Audacious. Go ahead, man.
No, I was just going to say that
You gonna buy XRP?
so trying to break down how this is going to work. So if we have two separate DLT systems, I'm trying to work with what T was saying. So if we have two separate DLT systems, let's say we have mBridge and...
Well, hold on. Let me put this out there. mBridge is really just a conceptual test to see how they could get different or how they could essentially create a permissioned environment of multiple countries on the same agreement to interface with one. Really, it's already been done with JP Morgan. I don't know why they didn't just study that and say, oh, okay, we already have a model for that, but whatever, right? So they're not going to actually implement mBridge. They would just come out with something where, hey, these countries are in agreement with one another in a private environment and they can perform transactions with one another within a closed ecosystem. That's DLT based.
Yeah. But then if we have like many of them, for example, and would you say, how would you say if they can't communicate with each other because they're all siloed, how would it work? For example, if you look at the XRP CBDC platform, can't we just argue that's another siloed ecosystem as well? So if each of them needs XRP for cross-border payments, why would they build their own separate system? Wouldn't they all just have to be? Wouldn't they all just have to be built on the CBDC platform? And that's the question. And my question is, wouldn't they all just have to be built on the CBDC platform via Ripple?
Yes, yes, you said it. That's my speculation. Remember when James Wallace had said, someone had asked him, what central banks are you working with regarding this stuff? He said, there's NDAs, but I can tell you this. We are working with every central bank outside of Antarctica. Do you remember that?
I may have read it, yeah.
Yeah, so what that told me, all these conceptual projects, what they're showing are inefficiencies, trying to travel across different environments based on different code to transmit value in these private permissioned ecosystems, and then trying to interface with a multitude of other systems to move value. Now, here's the thing, right? I say that, but there's another side to that, and that's Interledger, right? Because Interledger would serve as a multi-chain network where value would flow through several protocols, essentially. So it's not that they can't do it, it's that the institutions essentially adopting multiple frameworks, like, here's the fix to that, right? Audacious, like if they do that, there's two ways to do this, in my opinion. There's the easy way where the majority of these institutions just adopt Ripple's private CBDC framework across the board so that they essentially have a private ledger where they can conduct their business privately and no one can see it. And then when they need to go cross borders, they can all seamlessly tap into the mainnet that their private DLTs are based off of in the first place, which would make it a lot easier from an efficiency perspective to get things done. Or what they could do is the other solution and simply have side chains built off of those private DLTs that connect into the mainnet. Right, so then you'd see a situation, and I don't know if you remember me and Matt and Kurt. We had a long discussion about this, and I've talked with Matt about this a long time as well in separate other threads, right? Where we discussed the process of how this would happen, right? You would have, let's say, the Bank of the U.S. You'd have them on the ERC20 network, right? You'd have the Bank of Italy, and then they'd be on the Algorand. Well, Algorand was adopted as their public network, if I'm not mistaken. That's a bad example, Okay, let's choose something else, right? Let's say this bank's on another tech, right? So these two banks are on different technologies or code-based DLTs, right? One's on ERC20, one's on something else. Okay, now those two banks, unfortunately, are not in some sort of a domestic agreement with one another to be able to transfer, because that's what it's based off of, right? With that correspondent system in play, that bank is essentially going to trust the other one that they're going to get what's owed to them. And so they allow those funds essentially to be available to the other institution prematurely, right? Based off of some sort of a credit system, right? And you can do that within a smart contract based system because you're not exchanging one currency for another instantaneously, right? So it's almost like you're being credited essentially. But if you were to introduce something where you wanted instant finality and settlement between those two institutions, that's where institution A would plug a side chain that connected into the mainnet for the purpose of the exchange, essentially, right? So you could see the token go from the mainnet into the side chain of that institution, convert the currency over, and then travel down through the mainnet after handling its business via the exchange portion to the recipient. And then the conversion happens again within the recipient's side chain. And the reason they would do that is so that you could still maintain that privacy without people being able to see exactly what's happening on the public mainnet environment. So when you look there, you wouldn't see anything but a bunch of XRP moving, but you wouldn't really know what was going to what or who was going to who, right? That would only be revealed after the smart contract applied the instructions within the side chain for conversion, right? And so that's another option that you can see. So there's two ways they can handle this. They may choose one, they may choose the other, or they may combine both somehow, where you see some banks recognize the competitive advantage over using Ripple's tech regarding the private CBDC infrastructure, and then some may choose to go another way. And then the ones that go another way would just have to, essentially correlate with the XRP ledger via some sort of a side chain. If they were doing business with an institution that laid outside of their internalized agreements with whatever countries they had set up.
Report. I have this diagram of what I'm trying to explain, put it on the media, but I don't know how to do that.
Put it in the comments. I'll post it up top.
Sorry, I'd love to continue this discussion because I'm enjoying it, but it's like 20:04 in the morning and I've got to duck. But thank you, Joe. Thank you, T, and everyone else. Even you, Mo. Don't know what I'm thinking you.
Playing, brother. Hey, come on, man. Come on, man.
Yeah, it was good fun. I enjoyed it, but yeah, next time, man.
Yeah, next time I go to London, we get some chips and fish, eh?
You're welcome.
I wish Audacious was up here when you posted that, man.
Well, I mean, what's crazy is that we've talked about, look, Audacious, unless he wasn't paying attention, he's seen the combos that we've had with Matt Hamilton about this. He may have forgotten.
Got me feeling smart earlier.
Yeah, I'm still here.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, he had me feeling smarter. I'm like, oh yeah, I know this shit.
Yeah, I mean, look, none of this stuff, truth is, man, none of it's common knowledge, man. If it were, there'd be a lot more people invested in it. So, everyone's learning, there's a lot of information out there. It can get really convoluted. So, hey, man, I get it. But, this is why it's important to do your due diligence and really study, not even just the convoluted aspects, but the basics of these texts, right? If you know the basics, then you know that smart contract technologies can't provide that finality and settlement cross-border. If that were the case, companies like Ripple and technologies like the XRP token and ledger wouldn't even exist. It wouldn't be solving a problem. That's the problem it's going to solve, essentially, along with, obviously the correspondent banking system. It's got its inefficiencies, and I'm not going to, go down the rabbit hole on that, but we know, like I said, that token was tested as a replacement to that system. The only token that's been tested for that. And it was successful. So when they're ready to migrate away from that environment and they can reap the benefits they want out of the new DLT-based system, then it'll happen, and some things will shift around, and I think folks will be pleasantly surprised when that happens.